Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Odur Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. Today, I am with Ronnie, but I also saw it written Ronald.
But that's the full name.
So Ronnie is the
Yes,
pet.
I was named after Ronald Reagan, and I'm also James Carter. So my mother, James Carter, I think the election was 78.
Yeah.
So James Carter was the president to 78, and then Ronald Reagan after. So she said Ronald James. So I'm a Republican and a Democrat.
That is interesting. You know what? I read your LinkedIn profile. It is the longest I've ever read. It is so long. And I want to read it.
Well, it's because I've done many things.
Which is interesting. You know, sometimes I wish you are better educated than I am. You are basically, you know, when you meet somebody that has done everything better than you, you need to listen. You know, I wanted to read the things that you have done, and it is long. Today, you are working at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change.
Yes.
And there you have been the senior political advisor, Africa, for the last 1 year, 3 months, correct?
Yep.
And before that, you were also at the same organization as regional director, East Africa.
Yep.
A position you held for 2 years, 5 months. And then you are chief executive. How do you read this? IGOV. IGOV.
Yes. Integrated government.
I didn't know that.
We have to sometimes sound complicated, even when it's not that complicated.
Yeah. And then what you were doing, your skills were in team management, business development. And then you worked at the do you call it Halt Price or Halt Price?
Halt Price.
3 years, 5 months. And then you've been a chair of a board, the KCIC Consulting Limited. You've been a trustee at Uzima University College, and 31 other experiences. Even LinkedIn wamechoka.
Wakasummarize. It's called truncation.
Truncation.
Hey, kata. Too many stories.
But I have to say that you have also been at Safaricom. Something that is very, very interesting to me. Senior manager, government relations. And then all Starehe society. You've also been a chairman. You've been a managing committee member, presidential running mate.
You should have started with that one.
that one comes later, huku chini. But even before that, you went back to Safaricom. There is the presidential running mate is between two Safaricom.
Yes, exactly. It's between.
Where you were plucked.
Oh, very interesting story, that one. I was plucked from there.
Yeah.
When I was leaving, Bob Collimo told me, if it doesn't go well, you can come back.
Did he tell you this privately?
He told me this privately. But I didn't believe him. After the election, maybe 2 weeks in, I'm now, picking up the pieces, nimepanguza machozi, I'm done with the grief. I posted on Twitter the word onward, which got thousands of retweets. But he replied to that tweet and he said, "You do know you have a ticket back." And I tweeted him back and I said, "I hope it's first class." And a few weeks later, I was back at Safaricom.
That made national news.
It did, because it was unheard of somebody going into politics, and particularly at that very high level, and then going back to their professional career. Our problem on the continent is, unfortunately, a lot of our politicians do not have a career.
Yeah.
Politics is their career. It is their business. It is their enterprise.
Which makes 2 billion.
Yes. It's a big business. It's big business. But if you take that away from them, they have nothing. I had something to go back to.
Yeah.
And I have stayed on the course.
Amazing.
And you've read many things there. A lot of them are formal employment. A lot of them are my side things. A lot of them are boards and charity organizations. But this is the interesting thing. For the 22 or 23 years that I've worked professionally in formal jobs, I have held 11 jobs.
11 jobs.
Averaging 2 years per job. But 8 of those years were at Safaricom. So if you remove Safaricom, it is an average of 1 year.
Safaricom has changed the world and has changed Kenya in a very dramatic way.
Yeah.
But we are going to get back to that.
Okay.
Imagine you're on a world stage and you want to introduce yourself to people that have never heard of you. How do you start that speech?
Wow. I'm a Pan-Africanist who's passionate about bringing back dignity to Africans. So working with governments, working with communities to transform lives. That's, I think, what drives me. That's what I wake up to. That's what I do every day from morning to evening. From my Safaricom days to the days I served in government, to going into politics, to setting up my company, iGov, which does tech for public sector, to going to Oracle, to coming to TBI, and now senior advisor for politics on the continent.
Amazing. The world is happy that you were born, I think.
My mother is happier.
Yeah. Your mother?
My mother is very happy.
That's your father?
Yes, but you know our mzes, African men, they don't say it.
They don't say it.
They don't say it.
They say it. Mahali wakienda kukunywa kakitu.
Not to you. They say it to others.
Yes, for sure. This movie of yours, the movie that is your life, we want to grayscale it and shoot back a little bit. Years.
Okay.
When you were a young boy. What did you want to become?
Oh, those are many years. I wanted to become many things, like all of us. You know, you want to become this, and then after 1 week, you've met somebody else who's inspired you to become something else. But I think the singular thing that has persisted across in my life, and I used to say this many times, I want to be president. However, I'm seeing the look on your eye. Yeah. However, that may no longer be the case for many reasons, right? Mm-hmm. But it's because I think as a young person, you're seeing the emblem of what the presidency stands for. And you're like, that's what I want to become. And my singular goal is to become that. In fact, if we go back to when I was in high school, I charted for myself a 15-year path. I normally call it the fishbone concept. 15 years?
What is the fishbone concept?
It's a long story, but it is really that the head of the fish is where the way you eat fish.
Yes.
You eat it from the tail.
Yes, all the way
to the head. You don't start with the head. You finish with the head. Engine last.
Yes.
Right. So I developed this concept, and I drew an arrow with an arrowhead of where my picture of success lies. And the tail was where I was in that cave. And the point was, what are the things that I need to input in my journey to the picture of success? So what are the key milestones? What are the inputs? What are the investments I need to do socially, economically to get myself there? But also there were outputs. What are the things I need to be getting rid of, unlearning, disassociating myself with? When I finished doing that, it didn't look like a fish, the structure of a fish boat. So I just decided to call it a fish boat. Yeah. So nothing deep about it. But that is what I think has driven me. At some point after running for deputy president, so I came close.
Yeah.
I came close. If you had voted for me, I probably would have been in a different place now. I would have made my
you have got a lot of assumptions about where my vote went.
Listen, you see, the thing is, everybody normally tells me, Ronnie, we voted for you. But we had 76,000 votes. So maybe we need to be asking IEBC where all those votes went to.
76 when spread across Kenya is probably they're just right. They're probably just right.
But also in between there, I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a lawyer. This also persisted until actually at the point when I was now going to university. I'd actually been called to do law, but I changed it last minute. And I said, I don't know whether nowadays they're given an option to do revision, but we used to those days to be given an option for revision just before you go into university, and I changed it to business.
I think in Kenya you can always do anything.
That's a very, very accusatory statement.
Yesterday I was with a guy who is an investor in Rwanda. And he was telling me that he got these guys that had a lot of money, and they had planted something in Kenya, they had planted something in Uganda, and they were now going to Rwanda. And he didn't go through. And they were shocked.
In Rwanda, it didn't go through.
It didn't go through because they weren't able to follow the line.
And the standards are extremely high.
Yes. So, well, it's not very accusatory, but sometimes there's a kind of level of truthness. But before I forget, I have to go back and do a follow-up. And which you say that you might not want to become the president of this country. You would make a good president, would you not?
That's a trick question.
It's not.
I don't want the politicians coming after me asking me, Allah, you've declared you want to run. No, look. I think based on how I've been brought up, my values, my principles, my education, my experience, if called upon, I can give the job the best. And I can do a damn good job at it, I think.
You can.
All right? But at some point, I had to ask myself what the motivation was. So as a child, the motivation was, all that glitters is gold.
Yeah.
But as I grew older, I had to, and particularly after running actually in 2013, I had to ask myself the question, but why do you want to do it? So I had to go back to that question of the why. And I came to the conclusion that there are things I can do to change Kenya and beyond that do not necessarily need that office.
Yeah.
And for now, I am very focused on doing those things.
I agree. Fair enough. Let's go back to your childhood. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the village, in the city?
No, I'm a city boy. Yeah. I was born and brought up in Kibra. Number 9. That's my heritage. That's where I was born, brought up. I mean, those days, growing up in the early 80s, Nairobi's population was 1 million.
Yeah.
It's now 5 times that, right? So there was a sense of community. So I normally say I grew up in the Kibra community. To date, a lot of my friends are still people who I met in Kibra or when I was going to school in Olympic, right? And, fun days, things used to work then, estate life, Ken Okonthu was a very good friend of mine, unfortunately now late, Mheshimiwa. Was one of those guys who we used to do stuff with in Kibra, going to Rwandan camp, that forest, I think it's called Ngong Forest, hunting, we used to hunt rabbits. Do kids do that anymore? I don't think so. But anyway, yeah. So I was born and brought up in Kibra. Yeah, so I'm a city boy. Went to school in the city. So I started, my schooling in nursery was those things that used to be in people's houses in Kibera. Nowadays we call it Kibra. Those days we used to call it Kibera.
I wonder why it changed the name.
Because Kibra is the original Nubian name for that settlement.
Oh, I see.
So remember how Kibra came up is because I think in the 70s, Kenyatta, or late 60s, Kenyatta identified that land to settle the Nubians in Kenya, who at that time were, landless. So they were given that that's his prime estate. It is prime estate, 300 acres of prime estate in the middle of Nairobi to settle. But because the housing schemes, social housing was not a thing then, it ended up becoming what it has become now. But that's how then I think in early 2000s, when we were trying to assimilate all communities, Kibaki and team said, let's go back to the original name. I think when we were doing the IBC renaming of constituencies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's why we went back to Kibra. But yeah, that's where I was born and brought up.
What was your family like? Do you have sisters, brothers, and what were your parents doing?
Yeah. So, look, we were 4, 3 brothers, 1 sister. My folks were my mom was a secretary, for the longest time. I think she did some things, and then she went to Dow Pharmaceutical, where she was a secretary for many years until her retirement. My mzee was an electrician at Unga Limited. So we had two big brands in the house. And those days, everything other than Sofria, everything else was branded.
Yeah.
So we used to put on Dawa t-shirts and Unga Limited t-shirts and stuff like that. So we grew up in a family of 6. Unfortunately, I lost 2 of my brothers last year, back to back, within 6 months. So again, that's the other interesting dynamic that has happened for me, at least. Right, growing up, I always had these 2 big brothers, and they were tall, massive humans, who would always look out for me.
Yeah.
And within a span of 6 months, I had none of that. So that was a bit of a shake-up for me last year. But, interesting times.
I saw bits and pieces of you referring to those without exactly talking about them on LinkedIn.
Yes, I mean, it was really tragic, right? One of my brothers went to sleep and just didn't wake up. And he had a good day, he used to stay at home with mom in rural, in game. And, they had a good chat. That day he stayed longer than usual. At about 10:30, he says, see you tomorrow. He goes to his house and just never wakes up the next day. Exactly 6 months later, the other one wakes up, is going about his business on a Sunday morning. And in the afternoon, he starts feeling bad. And he says, I need to go to hospital. And he walks into hospital like this, and he drops dead at the door.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's tragic.
Pretty tragic. It really shook the family's foundation. We've pieced it together. We are going through the motions, dealing with it intentionally. But we're good. Yeah, these things happen.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I hope you're good.
Trying to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life can be tough, yeah?
Oh, no. I mean, life, and for most of my life has been, a lot of people will say smooth, right? So for most of my life, I have not had to be fundamentally challenged to my core until last year, right? And one thing I have come to appreciate is that life is not linear. We all have this very beautiful vision about, I want to go to school, get a good job, marry, get 3 children, buy 2 big cars, get a house in Buruburu or...
I like your car, by the way.
We had to go there. We had to go there.
I stopped.
No, movement must be intentional.
Yeah.
And that space between point A and point B is usually, in many occasions, the only time that you have to yourself.
Yeah.
Other than when you're in the toilet also.
Yeah.
So you must make it intentional. You must make it
a toilet at your bedroom.
Yes. Bedroom, sometimes you have company, most often than not, right? But in your car, that is your space.
Yeah.
So you must define what that space is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Still spacious.
Yeah.
Anyway, losing people. My brother came visiting me last year, some 2 years ago in Nairobi. He drove me actually from home from the village because he stays in the village. And then he comes here. We speak. I give him my goodbyes. What I remember and I've not gotten over up to today is me telling my brother while still asleep, and he gets into Matatu, goes home, drops in the village, he takes a piki and he dies.
Oof, Pole.
Yeah.
That was last year?
That was 2 years ago, 2021.
Yeah.
That can be, yeah.
It shocks you.
It shocked me.
I mean, we all expect death at some point.
Yeah.
And probably many of us have gone through the motion of accepting it as fate. But when it happens, it's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
It shakes you to the core.
Yeah.
My dad after... my dad, the typical.
Yeah.
Oya ore. We take that greeting for everybody else is imefunguka.
Yes.
It has opened. Basically, saying the day is a new, fresh day, right? We take it for granted a lot of times.
So much.
After my brothers passed on, it took on a new meaning for me because my dad is very consistent about that. Oya ore. Ichio. Umeamka.
Yes.
And for the first time, that greeting got a new meaning because it hit very close home that yes, there's a possibility you will not wake up.
You will not.
So it is not a greeting in vain. It is a moment to reflect and to thank God for life.
Do you know what I fear the most in life? Driving home.
I was going to think you'll tell me insects.
No. I will put up with insects and snakes, man. Do you know Tundaloom?
What?
Tundaloom.
Tundaloom, yes.
Yes. We used to...
The green ones?
Yes, we just used to see it passing in the house and we just walk.
And it's the normal business.
It's normal business. You are done with your high school. There's a story I saw in Cage that I love that story of Starehe. So, Ronnie, sometimes I don't want to interrupt. Sometimes I just want you to tell me the story of after finishing high school. So after finishing primary, you want to go to Alliance. How does this story unfold?
Starehe,
yes.
Don't associate me with Alliance, please.
Starehe.
We went to schools.
You think Starehe is better than Alliance?
No, I didn't say that. I just say don't associate me with Alliance. Alliance has a history of producing the men who have destroyed Kenya.
Really?
Do your homework. Alliance and Mangu. I know they are now, picking up stones wherever they may be. So you may want to give me a helmet when I'm walking out of to be safe.
Do you know Kasmuel Omure? He was here and he talked about Alliance. And that thing, within 3 days, it had 1.7 million views.
Wow. Why? Because he insulted Alliance.
He did not insult it. He did not insult it, but it was, for people listening, people thought that it was a privilege that they should not have had. And people were insulted.
No, now let me tell you, the people who went to Starehe like me
Yeah.
are the ones who are going to fix this country.
Yeah?
Because that place was more than a school. It was more than a school. So anyway, so you want the story. So
Yes.
So first I went to Moi Avenue.
Don't forget to tell me how it was more than a school.
Yes.
At the tail end.
No, that is by default.
Yeah.
You can't talk about Starehe without mentioning how it is more than a school.
Okay.
So I went to Moi Avenue Primary School, which is, by the way, now known more as a polling station than a school, right? But those days it was
things flounder in the winter.
But those days it was a proper public school. One of the only two in the CBD. But the only public school in the CBD. That one in Catholic parochial. So I'm one of the very few people across the world who have gone to a public school inside the CBD.
Yeah.
Tell me which other one. In a capital city.
But I wonder why they were putting them
Google
right at the center of the CBD. Why?
I don't know what the thinking was then, but I suppose, because it's an old school, right? I suppose then the issue was about centrality of access. So it was a very good school, right? It was a good, well-funded public school. And when you think about public schools in Kenya in the 80s, they were functional. Actually, public anything. Public transport, public school, public health. That's where people went to. There was no option for going to a private anything, right? Because systems worked. So I went to Moi Avenue Primary School. We used to use Kenya Bus, which was scheduled. It leaves at 7:15 from Kibra terminus, Olympic terminus. 7:15, and then 15 minutes after that. Every 15 minutes, there's a bus leaving for town. Amazing, right?
That was luxurious and very.
It was luxurious.
Yes, and full of privilege. That is something that you now pay 400,000 per term to happen to you.
Yes, and remember there was a partnership between Kenya Bus and Stagecoach in the UK. Stagecoach in the UK, which I think is still a big thing, used to put money in Kenya Bus because public transport was profitable in Kenya those days. Kenya Bus, proper. And then Nyayo brought in Nyayo Bus. So I used to pay, I think it was like a bob into town. You drop at ICA building, run to school, come back in the evening. Queues were working, everything was well operated.
The CBD was not a mess.
No, it wasn't a mess. In fact, there's a story that today would have scared me, but thinking about it, that it happened then was fine. My dad and my sister just the other day actually were reminding me, were telling me for the first time. I was hearing this story for the first time. My eldest brother and my sister, and my dad used to drop them by bus. So he used to take them to school, and then he continues to work in Starehe. So one day they are going into town and the conductor refuses with his change, or one thing or the other.
Yeah.
But they've reached the stop, which is ICA building. These kids are going down. My sister and my brother are going down. So they're off the bus, but my dad picks a fight with this conductor.
Yeah.
Fist fight. Lazima unirudishie change yangu.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the bus leaves. Watoto wamebaki chini. My sister cried. But my big brother says, no, it's okay. Let's walk to school. So they walk to school. My dad, either he gets his money or he doesn't. I can't remember how the story ended. But anyway, he goes to school to check if they've arrived. But the point I'm trying to make is the streets were also safe. So you could let your 10-year-old child walk in the streets of Nairobi unattended. Today you can't, right? Because, security is a problem. Right, law and order is almost non-existent in Nairobi now. Right. Anyway, so I finished Moi. Well, I didn't finish Moi. At class 5 or 6, I'm transferred to Olympic Primary School, where I met Ken Okoth. Ken Okoth is the first person who plants the idea of Starehe in my mind, because he actually makes it to Starehe, and I'm thinking, wow, somebody from Olympic Kibra can make it to that prestigious school. That's what I'm going to work for. So anyway, we work at it, but I missed it by 2 points.
Yeah.
So the cutoff that year, so Starehe uses a quota system because of the understanding that there are issues of equity. A kid in Mandera cannot be expected to perform at the same level as a kid in Nairobi. The kid in Nairobi has more access, has steamer to study in the evenings,
and a bus to school.
And exactly. So there's quota system for Nairobi was that the cutoff at that year was 575. I got 573, my friend.
Wow, over 100.
Over 700 at that time.
That's a lot.
I was a clever child. I don't know what happened in the process, but I used to be a very clever child. Anyway, I missed it by 2 points. Now, these 2 points becomes a problem. So I go to Starehe and I'm on a waiting list. I'm not shortlisted. I'm on a waiting list. That devastated me.
So then if people do not do decide...
So I have to wait for people who don't come.
Oh, okay.
Meanwhile, this is a prestigious school. So it is not likely that people will not come.
Yeah, they will.
They will come. If you've been called to Starehe, you come.
You come.
I had a classmate who was coming from Turkana.
Yeah. He came.
He came. It took him 2 weeks to get to Nairobi, but he came.
He came.
It's called Ethicon.
And through Kakamega.
I don't know what route you get those days. But the guy came.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I knew here, my friend.
Yeah.
There's no entry. Because all these guys will come.
Yeah.
So I spent every single day for 13 days camping at Starehe outside Dr. Griffin's office.
Wow.
Because my dad's friend was a teacher there called Mr. Osumba, now the late. Mr. Osumba said, if you are expecting people not to come, mutangoja sana. So let the boy go and make his case. So I picked myself up and I went.
Yeah.
And I stayed there. And every day, Griffin would chase me away.
Was your father as enthusiastic as you?
Well, he was interested in the free place that I was going to get in Starehe so that he doesn't have to pay school fees.
Oh, you don't? You don't pay school fees?
Well, Starehe is mostly charitable, right? So 70% of places at Starehe goes to disadvantaged kids. So you don't pay a single cent, not even uniform. You buy. You're given uniform. You're given housing. That's why I'm telling you, Starehe is more than a school. It's a home.
It's a non-profit.
It's a non-profit. It's a charitable institution. Funded by a lot of volunteers, right? It had a lot of... the story of Starehe is pretty interesting. So the first two, what were both classroom and dormitories, were huts, tin huts. You know these ones that you see in construction sites?
Yes. 2
tin huts that were contributed by Shell.
Oh.
Kenya Shell then. Shell BP, actually, I think it was. So that's how Starehe started in Kariako. right? So, and the kids were being picked from the streets. So the first students in Starehe were street children, orphans. And that's how it then just became what it is today. Anyway, so you want that free place. Eventually, I don't get a free place. My parents have to pay 10,000 shillings. Griffin says, no. You are a secretary, you are an electrician, you can get some money. So pay 10,000.
What was 100% of that, of what you needed to pay if they did not?
150,000.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. But majority, 70% of the kids were free, completely free, zero. And school holidays, you didn't have to go home. If you didn't have a home to go to, because many didn't have a home to go to, or if you had a toxic environment you are going back to, then we keep you here. And they would be fed throughout the holidays. I know a lot of people who went from Form 1, day 1, to Form 4, the last day.
My goodness.
Without ever going back home. To make matters better, there was something which we called the halfway house. Right? The hostels, Starehe hostels.
Yeah.
If you didn't have anywhere to go to after that, you would go to the hostels and you'd be given at least 1 year to find your footing before you have to move up. So there are people who went for 5 years.
Once you finished.
Yes. You're no longer a student, but we will keep you there. We will feed you. We will give you 2 toilet papers per month. We will give you imperial leather, soap per month to just keep you going.
It's an amazing story I've never known. Tell me about Mr.
That's why I'm telling you, Starehe was more than a school.
Mr. Griffin's.
Doctor, please respect the dead.
Dr. Griffin's, who was he?
So Dr. Griffin has a very interesting history, right? So he was a youth officer working for Kenya government as a youth officer. Right, so he's born in Kitale. He goes to Kitale primary schools. He comes to Patch, Nairobi school, for his secondary schooling. He joins government as a youth officer. He is then sent to Manyani. Do you know Manyani?
I've heard of it.
Where Sonko was sent to and disappeared. Manyani is a prison somewhere in the middle of Savo National Park. So there was a rehabilitation center there for errant Mau Mau children.
Yeah.
That's how it started. The prison started as a place for sending errant Mau Mau kids. So he's sent there as a youth officer and he's sent to the Manyani post. But he does such a good job at rehabilitating those kids. It gets the attention of government, of course. And now government is setting up National Youth Service, NYS. And Mzee Kenyatta sends for this Mzungu boy.
Yeah.
And he says, I want you to go. You know that we always hear about how Kenyatta had a booming voice.
Yeah.
And he says, I want you to go and set up a National Youth Service. And I am not asking you. It is a command from your head of state.
Yeah.
So Griffin goes to Gilgil. So he's the founder of National Youth Service, NYS as we know it today.
Wow.
In the meantime, he has a passion for rescuing kids from the streets. So he links up with this guy called Patrick Shaw. You probably heard about him when you were growing up. Patrick Shaw was this big, round Mzungu.
It was NIS.
Those days I can't remember what it was called, but yes, intelligence.
Yeah.
Walking around with a gun, and he used to go around shooting criminals on the streets. But some of these criminals were kids, and he would grab them and take them to Starehe. And Patrick Shaw's story is also a lot. You can talk about Patrick Shaw for days.
I'll probably get somebody to talk about him.
Yes, please. Some of the older Stareheans will tell you very good stories about Patrick Shaw. Anyway, so Griffin sets up Starehe. And for 25 years, this is commitment. For 25 years, he ran NYS and Starehe at the same time.
Wow.
He would be in NYS by 6 in the morning in Ruaraka. 12 noon, he would leave to Starehe, and he would run Starehe in the afternoon. For 25 years, every single day of his life. He created 2 massive youth institutions in this country.
Amazing.
Ended up not getting married because of that. He had no time. There's the story, of course, is told of Njonjo eventually sliced him of the Mzungu girl.
Yeah.
And after that, he said, I am not trying again.
You should have tried.
Well,
We needed
junior Griffin.
We needed
Junior.
Yeah.
But there are many juniors in us.
In us. Oh yeah, that also.
He became our father, and there's now 13,000 going to 15,000 strong.
Because these are now very many of them.
Many. The man's legacy is massive.
Tell me about how Starehe is not just a learning institution.
So I think, I've already started alluding to it. I think Starehe is a home, first and foremost, that focuses on empowering young, disadvantaged kids to have an equal shot at life. It is a space which shows you that you are not your background, you are not where you come from, you are what you choose to become. And then it gives you the tools and the resources to do exactly that. So when you're in Starehe, the focus, and it's a great academic institution, right? Since Griffin died, we have struggled to manage the transition, but we are coming back in terms of just going back to our original ethos and the things that make us what we are. But it is a space that tells you, we want you to do well academically. So we will give you the best teachers, we'll give you the best labs, best classrooms, we'll provide you with the books, but we also want you to be the best all-rounded person. At the core of what Starehe is for you to become a good person.
Yeah.
A good person, all-rounded. So sports is almost compulsory. Volunteer service, you have to do at least 2 holiday jobs in your 4 years in Starehe with a public institution, right? For no pay. Mandatory. Expeditions, so go to the outdoors, discover who you are, become a man, do all those things. So the focus is not on the academics, it's on developing the whole person. And that is why it makes it more than a school.
Isn't that what schools were all supposed to be?
Schools were supposed to give you knowledge, for you to convert the knowledge into practice. Starehe goes beyond giving you the knowledge. It forces you to practice it while still in school, so that when you get out there, you are now ready and well equipped to take on life.
How do they do this as part of? I believe this is extracurricular.
So it is the focus on extracurricular. It is the focus on being able to invest in extracurricular activities. So if you look at the Starehe extracurricular activity list, it's close to 100, probably more now, right? That gives you options to do anything and everything that you may choose to do, whether that is the games, sports, expeditions, all sorts of things. When you look at the President's Award schemes that are normally given, this is PA, the things that people go for expeditions, every year, without fail, close to 50% of recipients of the Gold Award come from Starehe. Because it is almost mandatory. And then because it's a boys' school, right? It's also very competitive, right? So I've seen Jagero doing expedition. Next time I must go also.
I'm going to do that.
I'm going to be there.
What's this relationship with the government? How does the government relate to it?
So, traditionally, government has supported Starehe through provision of teachers. There's now what we call capitation. So every student, you get capitation. But majority of the resources that go into... we cannot run Starehe with government resources alone. Absolutely. If you look at how Starehe is structured and run, it rivals any private school in Kenya today, in terms of quality, in terms of exposure, and the resources that are put at the students' disposal. So we have to go over and above, right? So a lot of financing from the old boys. So the old boys come together every year. We are putting in close to $1 million into the school.
$1 million?
We don't play. It's the place that made us.
But 200 million Kenya shillings every year.
I mean, it is.
I saw the CEO of Safaricom going there, and the pictures were clean shaven, man. It looked really, really good. The carpeting,
the place is good.
It's really good.
I mean, even just the way the place was structured and manicured, Griffin put a lot of thought into even just the infrastructure. It is one of the few schools I know that has a chapel, and a mosque. right? All very, very...
Church and a mosque.
Yes. In fact, the mosque is right at the gate. So when you walk into Starehe, the first thing you see is the mosque on your left and the music center on your right. One of the best, again, well-equipped music centers I know. And so I think when you walk into the place, you don't feel the pressure of... Well, you feel the pressure because it's a top academic performer. You feel that pressure, but you immediately and almost... naturally begin to feel at home. It's a very homely place. And we have structured it intentionally like that to be able to assimilate these kids that are coming from different backgrounds. The other thing that Starehe does is it is an equalizer. So in that very same school, there are kids who pay 1 million shillings for school fees. And there's another kid from Turkana who came and saw a toilet, a flashable toilet.
The ones who take 2 weeks to come.
The first flashable toilet they saw was in Starehe. But inside that space, you're equal.
Yeah.
And you're treated as such.
You finish Starehe. How does this movie play from there?
It is beginning to feel like a movie.
I'm telling you. I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs, and those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years, I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans, because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using paybill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online and I've been traveling and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to programming. That the movie was in grayscale. Now we are slowly getting into color. When you finish Starehe, did you want to go to an Ivy League university?
You get the sense that you really want to go to an Ivy League university. But you're done with Starehe.
Yeah.
Because Starehe is also part of a group of schools called Round Square. And Round Square is made up of, almost Ivy League kind of high schools, from across the globe. And I had the experience of, being a delegate at one of the first one that was held on Africa's soil, the first conference. I was one of the delegates. And so you begin to have these ideas about going abroad. But one of and I told you about the fishbone. I did the fishbone when I was still in Starehe. I was very clear in my mind also that I wanted to be here doing things in Kenya for my country. I wanted to make a difference with the things that I had learned. So eventually I go to a local university, Moi University in Keses, a place called Keses. That place is remote. That place is remote to the extent that when we used to go into riot, those days when university riots was still a thing, we would be fighting with villagers and they would come with bow and arrows.
Yeah,
it was serious business.
Why would you riot?
It was serious business
in the middle of nowhere.
because it was a thing for universities. All the other universities, including University of Nairobi, had the pleasure of stoning cars on the streets and going into town to cause havoc. We didn't have that, so we would cause havoc internally.
Yeah.
But the villagers would come for us seriously. Anyway, so I go to Moi University. I do business management, focusing on marketing, which I have never used in my life in terms of my professional career. And I leave Moi. In the meantime, I think I also do some, while I'm still in Moi, I do some accounting, SCCA. Those days we used to be told, if you want to go into management and business, you have to have CPAs and SCCAs. So I do my SCCAs. And in the meantime, my mom has gone to the US to be able to afford to go and do menial jobs.
Yes.
in the US to be able to afford my university education. In the process, she sends me, I can't remember how much it was. I think it was like $300, which was
Western Union.
Western Union, my friend. And those days it was Western Union, you go to Posta or Coop Bank. Which made me almost close to a billionaire at the university, my friend. $300. And this is not Kenya shillings.
That was a lot.
Dollars. Anyway, to buy a phone.
To buy a phone?
Yes, this is 1999. Mobile phones are not a thing.
Yeah.
So I buy a phone for $300, whatever that translates to Kenya shillings. A Nokia 3330. Grey. Or they called it silver. With WAP. Unajua WAP? Wewe?
Bona, do you know? I don't remember what WAP used to be. What is it called? If you're working at Safaricom, you should know what it is. What is WAP?
I think it was like World Access Protocol.
Yeah.
But it was what was allowing you access to the internet.
Yeah.
And it was like a dial-up.
Yeah.
But getting that connection was, it was something you didn't do. Internet had just become a thing. Remember, this is 1999. And, it was just crazy. But we didn't even have network in the university. So for me to make that phone call, using that phone, I had to go to Eldoret town, 30 minutes away from the university, to make a phone call. So you would have to give me an appointment. I'll call you on Friday at 2 p.m.
Wow.
Friday, mimi huyo, kwa ngeve, tumeenda tao. I wait for those calls.
You're the only one having this phone in the school?
Meanwhile, I was the only one with the phone in the university. So it became a phone booth. So you would come.
Tell me you turned it into
hire, business. Of course. Hire the damn phone. Go to Eldoret town, make your phone call, and bring it back.
What was making them bring it back without stealing it?
You steal it to take it where? There was no network. Network was very rare.
Yeah.
Even in Eldoret town itself, it was only in very specific spots. The other thing I would do is, I want to make a phone call. Sawa, nyinyi wote tupatane Eldoret.
Wow.
Tukae kwa restaurant, wewe unapiga yako. I made some good money out of it.
Wow.
The phone paid for itself.
So your mother did not send you money for a phone. Your father gave you a capital.
Well, I didn't look at it that way. And for her, it was also very
investment.
Very selfish, because she wanted to speak to me.
Yeah.
So you need to have a phone so that if I want to speak to you, I can call you.
Yeah.
But yes, it gave me extra money to take girls to what we used to call ICDC. Was a lunch spot for lecturers.
Why would you go there as a student and you're not a lecturer?
No, you are allowed to if you can afford it.
If you can afford it,
yeah, of course.
Why not?
Of course. So for you to, if you want to impress the girls, that's where you take it.
For everyone. So long as you have the money.
As long as you have the money. Anyway, so I do that. I finish university 2003. I think I graduate. And then now I start my professional career.
Yeah.
All these 11 jobs that I've done. I started by selling off socks in the streets of Nairobi.
Really?
I was so good at selling socks. There's a gentleman who said, you know what? Come and sell airtime. Safaricom airtime with Samchi. So Samchi easily was my first almost formal employer. So Esther Mshemi, I hold her in very high regard because she gave me that opportunity. I worked for Airtel a little bit. Those days it was called Kensale. So I did some audit work in Kensale with my little accounting that I had known. Left Cancel, I think, did some other hustle, and then I was pulled into Coop Bank. So I was pulled into Coop Bank and posted to Bungoma. Straight. I'd never known where Bungoma is. Even just trying to figure out on the map where Bungoma was. I knew the day I received my letter. There was no Google Maps to check. So you had to ask around, how do I get to Bungoma, right?
Yeah.
So I go to Bungoma, I do 2 years, I think, and some. Then I'm brought back to Nairobi, head office. I ran out of steam for that job. I quit, and I joined a startup called Impacts. In the middle there, somewhere by there, I had done health data systems. Again, way ahead of our time, we were introducing smart chips for healthcare so that you can have all your medical records on a chip. This is 2005.
Wow. That was
2004. Yeah, 20 years ago. It failed because the technology was way ahead of its time. By a guy called Isaiah Okoth. I hold him in high regard until now, by the way. Anyway, so, I move on from Coop Bank, I go to Impacts Business Solutions, which was also a tech company. So this is how now I begin to get into the tech world.
Yeah.
This is 2006. Then the election happened in 2007, the bloody election, right? And for me, that was an awakening in the sense that it was almost like a civic call to do something about our politics, because that's the first time as an adult now, not that youthful dream of I want to become president, as an adult, where I said, I want to do something about it. So I jump into, political activism. So we are part of the people who push for, going around and educating Kenyans on the referendum for 2010. So I did a lot of civic engagement at the time. But meanwhile, I'm still working. I do a talk show host. I'm a talk show host on a program called Hatua, which was airing on Citizen, KBC initially, then Citizen. For 2 seasons, I'd taken over from Jimmy Gathu, who was moving on to a different program. So I became a talk show host. So I've done TV as well for 3 years.
No wonder you're finding this very easy. So you're finding this very easy.
Are you not seeing how I'm sweating, boy?
No.
You're making me sweat here.
No.
It's hard.
You're not sweating, brother. You're okay.
It's second nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a talk show host for 3 years. It was a human rights in action show. We covered almost every single topic you can think of, including police brutality, access to healthcare, education, blah, 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 blah. Again, it really opens my mind towards this social issues that are affecting Kenyans and how deeply and grave those issues are, and how the system is so broken that it cannot address those issues. So I begin to become very aware. My civic awareness really increases at the time. I lose my job at some point. I'm fired.
I had. Is it the firing that you talked about on Engage because of tribalism?
Yes. So I'm working for these guys, and because of how deeply tribal the country had become in that 2007 election, almost immediately you begin to feel it in the office, and all the Luos and Luyas were fired. Now, whether it was by chance. And maybe if I talk to my former boss and he'll say, no, it was just by chance. Business was slowing down. We had to cut down on business. We picked these roles for them to be chopped off. And they just happened to be all Luo and Luya. But it was not unique to them. It was everywhere. Nobody was trusting anyone. In fact, when I hear people talk about this, protests that we've seen the last month or two, saying it is existential, I think people forget how existential 2007 post-election violence was. It was really bad. People were turning on each other, people you've known for years, who've been your neighbors, they've been your friends, they've fed you when you were hungry, but because of their tribe, we turned against each other. And for me, that was a wake-up call, that something was fundamentally broken that we needed to fix. Anyway, so I'm jobless but it was a blessing in disguise, because if that didn't happen, I would never have gotten to Safaricom.
Really?
Because the Safaricom happens that same year. And that's a whole other story about how I ended up in Safaricom. But anyway, I ended up in Safaricom and quickly go through the ranks. Within 2 years, I'm senior manager. Mostly by effort, but also by luck. Yeah. Because when I'm joining Safaricom, there's a transition between Michael Joseph and Bob Collymore. And so Bob comes and he restructures the entire organization. And I happen to be one of those guys who's put into a senior role as a senior manager. No, that time it was sector manager or whatever it was called, but a senior role to lead public sector. Now, my love for public sector in enterprise space starts from there. Like, how do we provide? We can criticize government, and we can criticize our leaders, but how are we, as citizens and professionals, providing solutions to government to be more efficient and to deliver better? And that's when I started questioning myself and said, "What's my role in all this? Even not necessarily as a politician." Just as a professional, what is my role? How do I use technology and the mobile phone to make government do its job better?
That was your job?
That was my job.
Because it confused me. I didn't understand it. Because you are sort of a liaison officer for the... I didn't understand. I thought it was a PR position.
No. It is taking technology solutions to government.
And selling it to them.
Oh.
That is new information. I didn't know that was what it was. I thought it was appeasing the government.
So there's a lot of good we did. Telemedicine, we introduced the concept of telemedicine to government through that role. Community health workers and managing them on the mobile phone. M-PESA for government payments. And we are not selling Safaricom here. We're just saying
no. To be clear with you.
Yeah.
To be clear with you,
yes.
Mr. Rooney.
Yeah.
I am very proud of Safaricom.
Oh, as I am.
I am very proud of Safaricom because the things that Safaricom has done in this country,
and not just in this country, Africa is proud of Safaricom.
Yes. Safaricom has done great things, honestly speaking. Even for me as a business person, I sell my books. And what makes my book sell is Safaricom.
Mobility.
You see?
It completely changed the way we interact.
Everything that Safaricom... Like today, I went to the village and I saw 5G and I was pleasantly surprised. In my village, next to the shores of River Nyando, there's 5G. And I tested the speed and it was coming to 335 Mbps.
It works. And I think because of pushing boundaries, and Safaricom has been able to really push the boundaries, even when things were not fashionable. I said, let's try it. 4G was actually forget 4G, 3G.
Yeah.
The guys in Vodafone in London said, Kenya is not ready. And Michael Joseph said, forget it. We've done M-PESA. M-PESA in itself is a story. It was, people don't know this. It was tried in in Pakistan or Afghanistan, somewhere in Asia. It was tried in South Africa. It was tried in Tanzania. Before it was tried here. And then here is where it worked.
Yeah.
But also because Kenyans, we have an appetite. Massive appetite for new things.
Is that so?
Oh, yeah. I think Kenyans generally, if you look across the continent, we have a very high risk appetite. So we are quite happy to try new things. That's why even when it comes to tech innovation, Kenya is the hotbed of startups and innovation and great things, because Kenyans themselves as people have a very high appetite to try new things. Nothing scares us easily.
I want to ask you two things about Safaricom. Number one is that consistently Safaricom has pushed boundaries, like you've said. There are companies that we have been very proud of, but have fallen by the wayside. And you can, one of the companies that I was very proud of that fell by the wayside was the supermarket Nakumatt.
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
Yes.
Very, very proud of it.
Yes.
But what do you think, in your estimation, has made Safaricom such a good business that has always pushed boundaries. What are some of the ethics? So what are some of the principles, that Safaricom runs on? What is the DNA of Safaricom?
Yeah, I think Safaricom is a sound business from in many aspects, right? But I think what is at the core of Safaricom is its appetite for innovation and, not fearing failure. If you think about the number of products that Safaricom has put out in the market that failed, that didn't work, it's enormous.
Really?
It's probably more than the number of products we know and use. And it is that appetite for trying, that go-getter spirit of saying, let's put it out there. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, it's fine. We pull it, right? Bob Collymore came up with, very interesting concept where he said innovation needs to be outsourced. So the innovation team was shifted and put, I can never quite remember what it was called, but they were put in a completely different environment, in a completely different building on Lenana Road.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yes. I think CVS building or somewhere.
Wow.
And they were told, your job is to innovate. Don't think about, will it work, won't it work? Innovate. And they were given the permission to fail. And I think that's most important. A lot of companies, and people don't push the boundaries in companies because they know failure will be punished.
Yeah.
And not rewarded. And it is a mindset that I think, as an individual, as organizations, we need to begin to shift to say failure is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, we must reward failure because I'd rather somebody who tries and fails than somebody who doesn't try at all. And because Safaricom then allows that space for innovation, you have all these ideas. In fact, I remember something we used to call the idea factory. Whatever idea you dream of in the middle of the night, drop it there. And we will have a team of technical guys, think about it. If it's feasible, we'll take it through what we call a gate process. And the gating was, get A, is it even worth trying? Yes, it's worth trying. Get B, what are the risks? Can we mitigate the risks? Yes. Do as a prototype. Does it work? At least to a minimum viable level? Yes, it works. Take it to get C. What are the commercials? The commercials look 50-50. If it's 50-50, let's try it. And it is how this company is. But I tell people, don't be deceived. Those guys there work like donkeys.
Yeah.
They put in hours.
Hours upon hours.
Hours upon hours for you to be able to see the output that you see. But also just the culture. I think because of that innovative culture, right? And, for example, when Bob came and said, no more VIP lifts. Safaricom used to have a VIP lift. Locked. Locked.
The
You have
VIP
to be,
has a key.
Yes, you have to be at a certain grade and above. Bob said, forget it. So he used to jump into a lift with everybody, right? He said, why are we always in ties? Forget the ties. Dress the way you want to dress. Come to work the way you want to come. But if you're going in front of a customer, then dress proper. Put on the tie. Right? So the culture also then allowed for a space where people felt some certain sort of camaraderie.
Google vibes.
Google vibes.
And Apple vibes.
In fact, I remember we even started introducing those things, beanies and, places where you can go and sit. They introduced a crash. A couple of times when I was a young father, I went with my kids to work, put them in the creche. Me, I'm busy working. In the evening, I'll go and pick them and go back home with them.
Wow.
They still have it.
They had people that are taking care of kids.
Yes. Up to now, if you go to the call center in Mlolongo, it's an amazing campus, by the way. They even have gaming rooms. The people, if you're tired, it's okay. Go and play a video game.
Wow.
But
that's good.
Yeah. But that culture comes through intentional leadership. And so I think at the end of the day, it boils down to leadership as well.
How then do you treat an employee, Mr. Ronnie?
Myself?
How do you, no, I'm asking you generally.
Yeah.
How do you treat an employee so that he can be productive? They can be productive.
I think the first thing that employers must recognize, I try to do it wherever I can, is to recognize that employees are not just, they are a resource, but they're not just a resource, they are people. And I think the most fundamental thing you must do is treat employees as people. You must lead with empathy, you must listen, you must have a feedback loop so that you are, it's not one way, it's two way. And then you must make them feel valuable. The other thing I've always said, when I think about my own career and why sometimes I move, is because I then feel the burden has been put on me to challenge myself to do more for the company or the organization. And I think that's wrong. I think the burden of making the job challenging is the organizations and the employers. It is my job to look at Jagero and say, this guy has more in him. How do I challenge him even more to produce better and to produce further? So as organizations, I think, and as an employer, you must come to that point where you're saying, you're constantly reviewing your environment, scanning the environment, looking at your employees, assessing their abilities and saying, Jagero has reached the limit of his ability. Let me stretch him further. Unfortunately, that responsibility has been made the employees. But some employees don't have it in them. Majority of employees don't have it in them. I will give you what you hire me to do.
Yeah.
So when I reach my limit, that's the limit. The problem is an employee who has reached their limit, they can only then do it for so long. They are human. They are people. They get bored. They become destructive, or they leave. So as an employer, if you really want to keep your guys engaged, you must constantly make the job more challenging.
One more thing I want to ask you about Safaricom. A lot of people that are going to watch this are very young people. They have found Safaricom, this product here, M-PESA. There's a story I heard, and I don't know whether this is true or false. There was a fight between Safaricom wanted to release M-PESA into the market, and the banks were pissed off. They did not want it because this is a cake. This is a cake that they don't want anybody to have a piece of. There's a story of how the first guy was called who? The Muzungu guy. What was his name?
Michael Joseph.
Michael Joseph went to Safaricom to plead with, went to State House to plead with Kibaki. Now let's try this thing. If it fails, it fails. But maybe you don't know about that story.
I know. What about Safaricom don't I know? I've been in Safaricom long enough. I was.
But anyway, if you know that story, you could tell it. You could give me a proper version of it. But if you don't, fine. But I want you to explain to people how really M-PESA started for people who are probably young and found it here.
Yeah, and the M-PESA story is really a beautiful story, if you ask me. It is a true story of innovation, and innovation or technology meeting a real need. Because that is really what I think innovation is about. Innovation, and I tell entrepreneurs, if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, I've tried entrepreneurship. I'm not the best of entrepreneurs. Yeah. I get great ideas. I build good things, but I'm not the best at, making them big. But this is what I know. A good idea addresses a real need. And if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you need to be addressing a real need. And what M-PESA did was address a real need. Banking was, I think there was only 3% banked people in the country by the time M-PESA was launching. It was expensive. Today, I know a lot of these young people see a branch of a bank in literally every corner of the street. Those days, they were very rare. When I started working for Co-Bank in 2004, or 2004, Co-Bank had 30 branches.
Wow.
Only. Barclays had just downsized to, I think, 15 branches. Countrywide, I think the total number of bank branches countrywide across all banks could have easily been about 100, 150, right? Today, even the smallest banks have more than 150 branches, right?
Yeah.
And I think that then created a real need. Now, M-PESA was then introduced as solution for, women groups doing their merry-go-rounds, and I think that is actually how it is tested as a solution to chamas making contributions. The rest is history. From there, it just blows, and it becomes a phenomenon, right? And everybody is referring to each other, and people start saying, I can pay you using this new thing called M-PESA, right? And it just becomes organic. So when Michael signed up to do M-PESA with Vodafone, he said, let us try it for 1 year. Or at least I hear this is the story. And he says, and if we don't do 150,000 users, sign-ups in 1 year, then we consider it a failure.
Only 150,000?
Only 150,000. They did 1 million. And it just grew, and it just became a phenomenon. Now, I think I know the story that you're talking about, because Michael, when the banks start making noise and they start saying, oh, these guys have come to disrupt us. And look, good innovation will always be disruptive. And you will always get a pushback. Right? So entrepreneurs know this. Entrepreneurs out here know this, that the system will fight you back, the economic system. And you just have to wait it out and sometimes fight back. But the thing is, Michael picks a phone. The late Mishuki was the finance minister at the time.
If you rattle a snake.
If you rattle a snake guy. And he goes to Mishuki's office in Treasury, and he tells Mishuki, let me show you how this thing works. And he says, we can pay your worker in the farm in Muranga.
Yes.
Kangema.
Yes.
And Mishuki says, what? He says, yes, give me his number. And they send the guy whatever amount it was, 500 bob or 1,000 bob. And Mishuki calls the guy. And the guy says, I found this one in my pocket. And Mishuki's like, what?
Yeah.
We have to show this thing to the president. That's how they go to show Kibaki. And the rest, again, as they say, is history. And look, sometimes we want to build things because the policy says, or the environment can only allow for this. M-PESA didn't wait for policy or regulation. M-PESA forced regulation to change to allow for mobile money. And if you look at the numbers now, it's phenomenal. A great percentage of our daily national transactions happen on M-PESA.
Amazing.
It's a beautiful story.
The banks had a big gripe with it.
Well, they had to catch up. So they had to review, the number of branches they have. They started opening branches in Mtaani, these things, I can't remember what they call them. They had to start using agents. They had to remove ledger fees, monthly ledger fees. Remember, you used to have to open a bank account with at least 5,000 shillings minimum deposit. And then they would hold, I think it was like 2,000 shillings. You had to have a minimum balance in your bank account. All those things disappeared because of mobile money. Transformational, if you ask me.
Yeah. Let's fast forward, right?
Yes, there's a lot to talk about. This should have been a series.
We are looking at it. I think we should make it a series. But let's see where it takes us. Let's talk about politics.
Yes.
Then we can come back to family a little bit and touch about a little bit about family.
Yeah.
Politics. You, at some point, you want to go and be an MP.
Yep.
In Luoland.
Yes.
There are so many stories about if you want to be a Luo politician, you have to pay homage.
Yep.
To certain individuals, to certain luminaries. Sometimes they are known, sometimes they are not known, but you are naive. Who are you? No, you knew.
I knew. And look, the brand of politics that I was attracted to was a politics that was going to challenge the status quo. So I was very clear in my mind. This is how politics is done today. But this is how I want to do it. Setting up a new standard. Because, and if you ask the ordinary Kenyan on the street, they are fed up with how we manage our affairs in politics. And so we were saying, can we challenge? Can we take the fight to these people? Can we change the game, right? Can we change the rules of the game? And, remember I told you, the birth of this ambition is out of the 2007 election.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, look, it's fundamentally flawed. So if we are going in, then we have to go in with a very radical approach to how you do politics. At this time, the shining stars of politics in my life, globally, Tony Blair and Bill Clinton. Those are the standard bearers. And you're looking at how they're running their politics. It's progressive. It's, it's bringing the left and the right together. It's something in the middle. In fact, I think they called it the middle way.
Yeah.
Right? It's something built out, the best out of both ideological worlds. Right? And I'm saying, what's the ideological approach to politics in Kenya? And, let's call a spade a spade. A lot of people will say, oh, Baba, or Dingaism, and the one person who is consistently ideological in their approach to politics in this country is Raila Odinga. For all his faults, this one you cannot fault him.
What is his ideology?
Social democracy. And he has been very consistent in advocating for social democracy for the longest time. Now, people will argue with that and say, articulating it and practicing it are two different things. But, I think that's a whole other debate for another day. But my point here was we have a bankruptcy of ideology. And if we want to shift the way we run our politics, then we need to become more ideological. We need to have ideological leanings. I don't mind you having a different ideological understanding or standing from mine, but please stand up for something.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be blown around by the wind. Right? One day you're with this person, the next you're with the other. What? I didn't say that, you did.
I'll take the bullet.
But stand up for something.
For something.
Stand up for something. Be ready to die for something, like Mandela said.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for me, this is what ails Africa.
Yeah.
That the fathers of Africa, our founding fathers, were very ideological people. When you think of people like Senghor, Mwalimu Nyerere, Mandela, name them, even Kenyatta to some extent, and Kenyatta one, right? They had firm ideological approach to politics and to governance. This has been eroded for whatever reason over the years. And today, a majority, if you walk into Bunge and ask any one of those guys what their ideological standing is, they probably will not have any. That is why people jump from one party to the other without flinching, right? And for me, then it was how do we shake this up, right? Number one. But number two, because you've asked me specifically about Luo Nyanza, was how do we challenge the existing ideological approach on how to deal with Nyanza issues, developmental issues. So, at that time, the question was, what does Raila stand for? And what is his approach to Luo Nyanza? And is it what I want to align with? Right? And at that point, fundamentally different perspectives that, if you look at, I guess, his understanding of we must be together, we must collaborate, we must remain united in our ideological leaning. We go to the negotiating table as one unit. I was maybe younger and of a contrary view, still am, that competition of ideas is the best environment. It is the most fertile environment for the best idea. The idea that emerges the best must be tested through competition. It must, because if you are not in a competitive space, if your idea is the best idea in a non-competitive space, it does not evolve. Because you're not being challenged enough to think further and deeper about that idea. But if you're being challenged, you're being pushed, and that is why I hope, for example, President Ruto appreciates the pushback he is receiving from Gen Zs and from Kenyans in general, because that competitive environment allows you to think deeper about your idea that is possibly a good idea.
Yeah.
But how does it become better? Through competition.
Yeah.
And so for me was, how do we then open this space in Nyanza to have competitive ideas? And that was my approach to politics at the time, right? So anyway, so I wanted to run for MP for Game. And I had started putting together my mikakati.
Yeah, but I want to stay.
Kupanga na
I just
kutenga.
want to stay because you go there, which is very interesting. Let's remain a little bit at the.
You want to dig deeper?
You know what I think, Ronnie, and one of the reasons of bringing sharp people like you on this podcast is to be a little bit bolder.
And to push the needle further.
Yeah. And you said something that has piqued my interest, that we should be together when we go out there and negotiate on the table, should be speaking in one voice.
Yes.
Should bring our ideology as a single unit. Okay? So the question that I wanted to ask you is, as a Luo people, what do you think we have been, what have we been presenting over the years? What do we want as Luo people?
I think the Luo nation has done very well for itself. Look, if you go back into the history of the social structure of the Luo nation, with the Council of Elders and the Ruoth, it allowed for vigorous debate of ideas and the society's issues. But once a decision was taken, it was a communal decision. Whether you disagreed with it or not, it was a communal decision. And I think if you look at, and some people will argue that today, Luo politics is not a reflection of that, traditional and cultural way of doing it, because in a more democratic society now, we expect to be hearing more voices and allow for that. But in a sense, it does reflect, that old way of doing things. That you still have a Ruoth, you still have one voice. And in any event, I don't think it is unique to Luos only. Luos have a tendency of sticklers to culture, right? In fact, the West. So if you look at, the West of Kenya, there's more cultural awareness, if you like, and people stick to it. But translated into the modern society with with global politics, if you like, I think you can find similarities between the two.
But what I'm asking specifically, Mr. Ronnie, is that okay? So let's for specificity's sake, we as the Luo Nyanza, we are fishermen, yeah. We do a little bit of farming, the rice in Ahero and other places. We could talk about health, but that's another issue altogether. And we have education, and we have industrialization. All these things that should be happening in Nyanza. So my thinking, I'm not very good at politics and how it works and policy, which we are going to be talking about. Policy. So I am thinking that if you're coming from a particular region, and I don't know how it works, you'd correct me if you can correct me if you may. We have farming, we have fishing, we have all these things that we are supposed to be, that should uplift us as a people. Because if we have tractors helping us, if we have fertilizers, if we have irrigation helping our farming, that's a good place to be. And I think as a people, if you want to come up, then these are the places where we should be injecting money and we should be formulating policy around all these things. Okay? We have education. What is the state of our schools in Nyanza region? So I think when you are when you are a father and this is your household, and you're seeing that this child does not have this one, we do not have education properly in this household. As a father, how do I make sure that we have education? We are struggling with diseases, probably gonorrhea, and we have got this plantar fasciitis that's not going out. We have
Did you have to mention gonorrhea?
Not gonorrhea. No, I didn't. No, it's not gonorrhea. I want to talk about this one that comes from drinking water. What is
cholera?
Yes. Sorry. Sorry. So somebody, you're saying that, okay, these are the things we want to happen in Nyanza.
Yes. And
when we are coming to the negotiating table, we are bringing these things. But I'm afraid that we have not been talking about these things. Our politics have been sort of, like for example, Ruto went to Raila and told him that, okay, these people wamenizoea sana. Nataka unikulete mzee, unisaidie.
Tusaidiane hii kazi.
Yeah, it's a kazi ya Gen Z. I don't think I can manage it.
Yes.
Kuja. But you need suddenly what he's doing is just apportioning them positions. But if I was negotiating, I was saying, how do we do things that are bringing us development? Because getting Joho, who has been in politics for the last 5 years as a governor in Mombasa, and his record is not, you know, there is nothing to write home about. And this is a person that is brought to the table. What I'm asking you specifically is the things that are supposed to uplift Luo Nyanza. Have we brought them to the table?
Okay, and Jagger, your question is very valid, but I think the answer is not as simple as you'd like it to be.
Okay.
One.
Okay.
Developing a conducive economic environment for prosperity and for us to be able to see better schools, better health outcomes, food security is national government's job.
Okay.
And for the longest time, Luo Nyanza has been outside of that system. Now, it can be argued that, for example, Raila has access and influence on that system, but is not in control of the resource. So like you rightfully said, a father must be able to see this son of mine is going hungry. Let me feed this one. But you can only feed this one if you have the resource. And if you have your hands on the purse strings. If you don't, you can only negotiate with the neighbor and tell neighbor, Jirani, you have resources, bwana. My children are sleeping hungry. Saidia. It is up to the Jirani to saidia or not.
Yes.
Right? So I think we must understand and look at it from that context, that the national pass, and this is why I think also for the longest time, Kenyans have said, let us devolve the funds and let us take them closer to where their needs are. That's devolution. And so devolution should make us now stop looking at Raila and start looking at our governors. And the question we should be asking Nyong'o and Orengo and Gladys Wanga and who am I leaving out in Migori? That guy. Chilayako.
Yes.
Right? We should be asking them, okay, this fight we fought, we won. Funds are being devolved to the counties. Now, the father has gotten some resources from Central and has brought to you. What are you doing with it? I think that's the more fundamental question we should be asking. At the devolved level, how are we addressing the very unique needs of Siaya, Homa Bay, Migori, and Kisumu? How is that translating into creating a conducive environment for trade, for investments, so that those things can then translate to better development outcomes? And you can see what Governor Gladys Wanga is doing in Homa Bay, right? And I suspect in another few years, this conversation we're having will be irrelevant. If we hold them accountable and if we participate collectively in creating that conducive environment. So that this whole conversation about what has Raila done will become irrelevant, because I don't think it is up to him. Then, and this is at the micro level. You have, of course, the macro issues. And those macro issues sit squarely with President Ruto. Creating that national macroeconomic environment for prosperity for all is his number one responsibility. So today, if he has brought in, he has co-opted friends into government, those friends, if they let him down, we will not ask Joho about mining and blue economy. We will ask the president.
I wanted to ask,
the buck stops at his desk.
I wanted to ask you how he's doing, but I'm not going to put that burden on your shoulder. I want to go back to that.
I plead the fifth.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that. You know, I also went to Starehe. You know the name was Starehe? It's called Olembo Boys.
Olembo Boys. No, the problem is you went to Olembo Boys for Starehe. No, you didn't go to Starehe.
Yeah.
You went to Olembo Boys for Starehe. Ulienda kujistarehe.
Yeah. So, how does this work for you? Being an you told me, you were telling me about a plan. You remember where we stopped?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, look, in this political awareness now, I think I'm pretty active.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't say this often, but the first person I really wanted to support for presidency in 2013 was Martha Karua. Okay, so I started doing my homework around, what is Martha, what's her ideology, what's her leaning, what's her vision for Kenya. But in the process, I have this situation that brings PK and me into the same room.
Yeah.
Right? And we are having this conversation, and I'm like, no, I'm not convinced, my friend. And he says, come to my office. So I go to his office the next day, or a couple of days later. And we had a nice, long, lengthy conversation. And the clarity of thought he had in terms of what ails the country and how to fix it and what his vision for Kenya won me over. It was very clear. And, and when you talk about policies, I'm sure we will come to that. There's primarily what you look at in government delivery is political will and a leader who's clear on the priorities. And PK mentioned 5 things and was consistent. For the 3 years that we were building his campaign, and went out to campaign, he was very consistently clear on 5 things that he said were going to unlock the potential of this country.
Do you remember the 5 things?
Yeah, pretty much. And so he was very clear in articulating the problem. And the problem was youth unemployment and security. And they are correlated. If you have unemployment, you will have higher insecurity, right? And the question was, and the security issue is important for investments. And if you're not fixing the security issue, you're not being able to attract investments. People are not going to put in money to build factories and, develop farms, for example. And if you're not doing that, you're not creating jobs. So you're stuck in this vicious cycle. Right? And it is not just, physical security, it's physical and economic security, right? So how do you address these issues? So, he went about, one, it's reforming our criminal justice system. So how do you ensure that we live within the rule of law?
Yeah.
Okay. He wanted to make sure that you have a healthy population. In healthy population, you need to be addressing food security, so making sure that people are having a balanced diet. But in the event that they fall sick, they have access to affordable healthcare. He wanted to make sure that for us to be able to grow that food we are talking about, you must have water. And so he was going to put a dam in every county.
Wow.
right? I can't remember the other two. No, infrastructure. And we talked about infrastructure.
Yeah.
And look,
dual carriage to Kisumu.
to Kisumu and beyond.
I love that.
And beyond. And when you talk about infrastructure, it's not just roads. Unfortunately, in Kenya now we've started to talk about infrastructure, but we only think about roads. But infrastructure is all-encompassing.
Yeah.
It is roads, it is power, data now. Fiber is massive. If you're not investing in the digital superhighway, you're not investing at all, right? It's hospitals, it's schools, it's housing. That's infrastructure, right? So we were thinking holistically about how do you develop. And you see, the good thing about infrastructure is it also creates a lot of jobs. Because if you have shovel-ready projects, you are able to attract investors quickly. You are able to get more young people onto site very fast. But it also has sub-components. People who are supplying doors, supplying windows, supplying taps, supplying toilet bowls, whatever the case may be. You can create an entire industrial revolution around a house. So those are the things that we were thinking then. Anyway, so I'm drawn into PK.
Yeah.
And I'm believing in this guy.
Do you think that those things is, having now gone into politics and is now out of politics, do you think that the 5 things that he put on the table was basically the blueprint to a good economy?
And look, we said it then, and I think we would say it again.
Yeah.
Those things have not, we've seen progress in some,
Yeah.
but the things have not been addressed. And we are in a deeper hole. Right? And because of that, we are where we are now. The economy is there for everybody to see.
For
I
sure.
think there has been progress in creating an enabling environment for business, right? Over the last 10, 15 years, I think there's been significant progress. The work that Kibaki did enabled some snowball effect into the later years. And now you're seeing, a lot of multinationals which are willing to come and set up camp here. The issue of corruption needs to be addressed, obviously, because that puts off a lot of people. A lot of companies, for example, have come here, gotten frustrated and said, Dangote, the richest man on the continent, wanted to set up camp here and just couldn't navigate the system.
The cement.
Yes, and he was being brought in by none other than the president, who said, you come, set up. This is the richest man, being brought in by the president of the country, and he gets frustrated by the system.
Who was it, Kenyatta 1?
No, Kenyatta 2.
Kenyatta 2.
Yeah, this is a few years ago.
Of course.
We seriously need to think about how we create that enabling environment. Because if we are not addressing that.
But you see, now you've confused me somewhat.
It's a very confusing situation.
You've confused me because there is a thought that you are going with, and then we jumped into this enabling environment. But then let me just stay with the enabling environment.
There are many thoughts. I told you this should be a series.
Where do people get to? The people that are coming from outside, where do they get to? Where they feel like now I can't thread the needle. What is it? What is it? What?
Look, anybody who is investing wants a return. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
Jagero. You put in money, I want money back.
Yes.
And I want to put in money with the least effort. I'm bringing investment to your country. Why should I go through hoops? Why should I go through, 30 different stages to register my business? Why can't you have a one-stop shop that allows me to do all those things that you need me to do? And all those licenses that you need me to get? One stop, which is what Rwanda is doing now. Which is why a lot of people are going to Rwanda now. Because it's a one-stop shop.
The government is not seeing that they need a one-stop shop?
Look.
Why is it broken?
And I'm sure we don't want to complicate this discussion, but the point is, you have extractive economic systems, and you have inclusive economic systems.
Explain.
Now, on the continent of Africa, we are largely still dealing with very extractive economic systems, where the system sees an investor or sees a new idea from Jagero, and the first thing it thinks is, what am I getting out of it? Rather than, what will Jagero put in that will help us collectively, inclusive? Now, you said to yourself, no, maybe you were mentioning it was the other way around, that the standards were too high in Rwanda, in a conversation we were having before. But the point is, and we all know this, you want to register a business, you have to go and get a name and license. The guy sitting behind the desk, the first thing they'll be thinking about is, how can I make something out of this guy?
Yeah.
And until we're able to address that, until we're able to fix our system so that the economic institutions and political institutions are inclusive, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
We do have a problem. And so an investor wants to know, how am I making my money back? How quickly am I making it back? How much effort do I need to put in to make back? If they do their calculation and they feel this is too much heavy lifting, they will not put in the money. And this is why the ease of doing business has become a conversation we all need to have. Kenya has improved significantly, so we must give credit where credit is due. That index has improved, but there's still a lot more that can be done to make it even easier for an investor to walk in, put in their money, and be able to reap from their investment. Meanwhile, they are creating jobs and hopefully addressing a need that is present and, that we all feel.
Yeah. I talked to you about political issues and you jumped up like, what it is?
Because look, I mean...
Yeah. What is political issues, Mr.?
Look, any leader who comes into power immediately faces a challenge. And this challenge is this thing we call the system. You have gone out there, you have sold your ideas to Wanjiko with your manifesto, and Hustler with your manifesto, and you're now seated behind the desk. Immediately, the first thing you face is the gripping power of civil service.
Yeah.
Because civil service sees political leaders, including presidents, as passers-by. Umekuja, umetupata hapa, utaenda, utatuacha hapa.
Yeah.
This is what led President Uhuru at some point to say, "Munataka nifanye nini?" He was so frustrated.
We are bleeding 2 billion per day and there is nothing I can do about it. Because that was such that I was shocked at that.
We have to accept, and it is not just in Kenya, it's everywhere across the world. In the US, in the UK, all modern political systems.
I saw Trump really bitterly complaining about it in his last election.
Exactly. And but the thing is, the civil service is an animal by itself. And any political leader, this is the first challenge you get the first day you walk in. I have this story of a good friend of mine, January Makamba, former minister in Tanzania, was telling me that when Kikwete was elected, he was being given a brief. Before swearing in, being given a brief. All these people from civil service, head of civil service, and military, and everybody. And they all came and told him what he cannot do.
Really?
Oh, yes. They started by briefing him on what he cannot do. By the time they were finished, he asked them, okay, so what can I do? They had left him with nothing. Basically, they were telling him, you can't do anything.
Really?
And this is just how civil service is structured. It's an animal. Government is an animal, right? And this is where, political leaders then need help. So sometimes I sympathize and I look at political leaders because we demand a lot from them. They are the ones who came and sold their vision to us. So you better figure it out.
Yeah.
You better figure it out. And so where the political juice then comes in is telling political leaders, look, friend, you're going in there, but you're going to deal with an animal. That beast can run by itself without you. They can be coming to brief you, but government is operating. we didn't have CSs for 2 weeks. Did government stop?
No.
It can't stop. That machine cannot be stopped. It's an animal, right? So we are telling him, look. Those guys have their own agenda.
Yeah.
And government will be government. Civil service will do what civil service does. What are the things that mean most to you? What are the things that you want as your legacy? What are those 5 things? Prioritization. Remember, we talked about prioritization.
Yeah.
Can we prioritize? These are the 5 big things that will make the biggest difference. And we say, okay, now work with those 5 things. Out of the million things that you are supposed to do before you leave your office, these 5 things cannot fail. Prioritize those things. Now, what you do is you put your full political power on those 5 things. That's what political juice is. Parliament, everyone.
Yeah.
You use your entire political power to make sure those 5 things are prioritized. That's why I really liked when, President Kenyatta came up with his Big 4 agenda in his second term. And he said, look, ni kama hizi zingine zimenishika.
What do you want me to do? Let me do this.
Let me do this for.
Yeah.
But I will put all my political power on these 4 things. And we will align the entire of government, including government policy, to make sure that funds, I was the chairman of Youth Fund at the time.
Yeah.
I went into Youth Fund with all my vision and dreams and ambition, right? President Kenyatta came back 2017 after swearing in. The next day, we all got memos from the head of public service.
That?
You must align the entire operation of your institution to the Big 4. Now that's political juice.
Knowing what you can do and what you cannot do.
Correct. Budget, everything. Aligned to this thing. You're going for a function in Europe. Does that function have anything to do with the Big 4?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, deprioritized. That's political juice. Just ensuring that all political constituencies are clear on what your vision is, are clear on what the priorities are, and therefore are putting their entire effort to delivering on those priorities.
Amazing. African politics.
Oh, that's a beast. That's a beast.
You guys that are out there.
Out where? But I get your point. Yes. Seeing other things other than Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes it's a good break.
Yeah. I feel like you guys are zooming in. When you are in Mars, you're zooming on the Earth. and you're asking what is going on in there.
Bird's eye view.
Yeah. What? Because I don't know whether it's a true statement to say that Africa has stagnated politically and perhaps economically.
I think there are 2 things that we need to be asking ourselves,
very
right?
Slow, yeah. Some of these questions, I want you to rephrase them for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how to answer them, to ask them.
No, and I hear you.
Yeah.
And I know it is a struggle, not just for you. I mean, even for practitioners in the space. Sometimes it is a struggle to draw the line and the boundary between politics and governance. I think politics is an animal that is the same anywhere. The other day I was telling, people were saying, Gen Zs have fundamentally shifted how politics will be done in Kenya. I said, forget it. Politics.
That's a bold statement to say about Gen Zs.
No. I have Gen Zs in my house, so I love them. But the point here is, the reality is, the politics will not change. It has not changed. In fact, I don't think we've moved a dial on the politics, because politics as a trade, let me call it a trade, is the same from the days of Jesus with his the guy who betrayed him was called
Zacchaeus. No. Judas. Iscariot, the man of 30 silvers.
Look, but that's my point.
Yeah.
Even in Jesus' government, there was a guy who was willing to take a few pennies to betray the guy. The politics is the same. Politics is about power. Politics attracts the worst of us. And therefore, when you go into that space, in the US, in India, anywhere, It's the same. Maybe only the Scandinavians have found a way of
They have.
ring fencing them.
Norway is pretty.
If you think about the Scandinavians, they've somehow found a way of ring fencing themselves from these bad manners of politics. But politics anywhere in the world is just that, politics. And I don't think the way the conduct of politics is going to change. It's about grabbing power by all means necessary. That's politics. And it's about resources. Nobody goes into politics not having their mind on having control over the resources. It's always about the resources. That's politics. Whether it is local, national, geopolitical, global, it's about resources. The US is a global power because they want control on global resources. Whether it's oil, minerals, whatever the case may be. This is what politics is. I think what may fundamentally shift is governance. That's why I'm trying to say, you can ask a question around politics and we can talk about the politics, but I think what we are more concerned about is the governance. How do we govern ourselves? What is this social contract? What are we willing to give up to gain X? Is it our liberties? Are we willing to give up a bit of liberties if you're going to be able to deliver? So think about Rwanda, for example. Rwanda works. Rwanda is a system that works. But everybody says, but he's an autocrat. But who are you to say if the Rwandese, that they told me they're not Rwandese, if Rwandans themselves are saying, it's okay. We are willing to give up our liberties to this extent for as long as the system works. In Rwanda, a boda cannot overtake a vehicle.
No, you can't.
You line up. When the lights are red, you line up behind the vehicles like everybody else. Mahali likupatia hiyo red light, ndio unasimama hapo.
Hakuna mambo ya kuja kama Uganda.
Hakuna things work.
Yeah, they do.
Buses still move on schedule in Rwanda.
Yeah. I'm shocked at those things.
It is a balance. So governance is a balance. It's a social contract. It is, we're willing to give up this for you to be able to do for us this. Now you have to find the right balance, right? In terms of ensuring that we are still, upholding human rights. We are still allowing people their civic rights of association and blah, 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 blah. But we are delivering on what they expect us to deliver on, whether that is in education, in security, on health. So I think the question really we are asking is what's happening to the governance on the continent. If you look over the last few years, human development has improved. More kids are going to school. We have better education outcomes. We are more competitive now globally. So our kids can now go to any school anywhere in the world, New York, Singapore, and be competitive. Why? Because the quality of education has improved and many more people are going to university now. That's a plus. We need to celebrate that. Health outcomes. We now have more science and research being invested in our health institutions. So again, we are having better health outcomes. In fact, a lot of now new scientific knowledge and thinking around health is coming from Africa. It's coming from the continent. We need to take it to the next level, fair. But it's happening, right? The economic space, trade, now with the free continental trade area, right? Trade is improving. We are opening up the barriers, or rather removing the barriers and opening up the borders, right? So there's more trade that is happening. So there are things that are working. Right? But there are also things that are not working. We're fighting more. We're killing each other more. Crime rate is going up. Right? Unemployment is increasing. Quality of life as a basic thing is reducing. So I think we need to then be asking ourselves the question, what is the gap in our governance expectation?
What is the gap?
Yeah, what's that gap? It will be different answers for different people.
Talking about Kenya, perhaps.
Look, Kenya is a modern society. I think, my dad came the other day into the city. I won't say exactly what he said. I will paraphrase because it will get me in trouble. But he walks into we drive into the city, and he's a guy who doesn't like the city. So he normally comes in and out, and very rarely. But he came and he stayed there. So we moved around quite a bit. And he said, wow. Nairobi has grown. This is like London. He says, no wonder these people cannot manage this country. It has gone beyond them.
It has gone beyond them.
He says it has gone
It's an animal now.
It is an animal. So if you think about the bigger picture, Kenya is a completely different place than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. All right? Our challenge is this, that the majority of the population was born into the Kenya that exists today. They were born after Kibaki takes over.
Yeah.
So this is for them, is the bare minimum. Is the irreducible minimum. But they are also the most exposed. So they can see how their counterparts live in Johannesburg, in London, in Paris, in New York, and all these other places. So they can compare. And therefore they know and feel that they're being shortchanged.
Yeah.
And so I think the leadership challenge here is, how do you bridge this gap by, one, managing their expectations, but also being seen to be doing something to close the gap.
Great. I think your answers have been satisfying.
Clearly.
Yeah. because what you've done is give my questions more meaning. You know when Nyong'o, I remember at some point he was having a press conference, and then these guys asked him a question and said, "No, that's the wrong question."
I love.
Let me advance you the question, then I will answer.
He lends you the question you should be asking.
Yes. He learns the question that you're trying to ask, but you have no words for it, which you have done. If coming to the tail end of this interview, I just want to ask you, because this is very important, I think, to people, because you have been in, your career has developed over the years. And I think there are people that might just be starting their careers. And I just have two questions about careers. I will ignore the rest for because of time.
For another day.
Yeah.
Series 2, episode 2.
Career advice. There are a lot of people, if you look at LinkedIn, you'll see something very interesting, that they even talk as if, when you look at somebody talking on Facebook and LinkedIn, they're completely different people. Completely. Like, for you, I think if you spoke on, like Conor Moore, if he spoke on LinkedIn and spoke on Facebook, he's the same
guy.
Yeah. You could be the same guy. But there are people who are just completely different on Instagram. And
if you go to Instagram and TikTok, it is they're even completely different now.
Completely.
Yeah.
Career advice. What did you give to a young professional in Africa who aspire to build a career in public service or political advisory roles?
Yeah.
Or just how do you just, develop as a career person properly? What are some of the principles that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, I think those are two different questions, but may end up having the same answer. I think passion in what you want to do is fundamental. If you're not passionate about that thing that you believe in and that you want to convert into your career, you will not be happy. It's as simple as that. Sometimes we do get into jobs just because we have to survive. We have to get that paycheck. We have to land that paycheck. But the long-term plan should really be to get into a space in which you're passionate about. That gives you purpose. That at the end of the day, you'll go back home and you'll say, you know what? I made a difference today. Because that's what makes you sleep. Young people today are driven by their ambition to get high-paying jobs. Those things don't exist. High-paying jobs don't exist. If you want to get to be high-paid, go into enterprise. Start your own business. Pay yourself. And also learn to start from the bottom. There's something about parachuting into senior positions that then makes you you don't have depth. You don't have the depth to carry through with a function and with a role. There's something about starting from the bottom. Starting from the bottom gives you a firm foundation, but also once you have progressed higher up into your career, you will be able to understand those guys who work for you because you were there once. You've done that job, so you understand it. So I think the first thing really you should be very clear about in your mind is passion. The second thing is you must then come up with a plan to pursue that path and give it everything, whatever it takes. Don't get distracted. Unfortunately, a lot of people fall off the bandwagon because, midway through your career, you see something else that is more shiny. And that's the thing you want to jump onto next. And by the time you're done 10 years in, you have been all over the place. Nothing makes sense anymore. So now you're lost, you're just wondering, and probably you're just chasing the paycheck. So I think a career is something that should be a vocation, that you feel called, that you're passionate about, that is not about the paycheck, that gives you purpose. If you keep those things in mind, and it should be about service. It really should be about service. Now, there's another thing that I think is important. The world is evolving and careers are evolving. Even in medicine, I now see doctors, people who go through medical school, but are not practicing. But they're doing something in the field of, technology, because they're bringing the thinking from their training in medicine into technology. And if you ask them what they're passionate about, don't say medicine. They'll say technology. But it's how then the technology bridges the gap with healthcare. And so I think, because of all this tech revolution we're seeing now, my career advice for a lot of people who are starting up now is think about the intersection between what you're passionate about and technology. Because the world is fusing with technology in every field. And so, just keep that if you want to stay competitive.
How do you deal with setbacks?
You pick yourself up and keep moving. Fail forward. Learn from it. Right? Like I said earlier, I think failure is a good thing. We learn in failure. Life is not linear. There will always be setbacks. You will be hit. Unlike our fathers and grandfathers who are very stoic. Sema, hey, kijana. Pick yourself up and move on. They didn't take time for self-care, for example, for reflection, for sitting back and learning from your failures. And I think there's something there to be said about mental wellness. It's about how do you ensure that you have the toolkit to deal with failure. How do you have the right attitude to pick yourself up and appreciate that was an opportunity for growth, that it was not a judgment on your character or your ability, but that it was an opportunity for growth. I think that's how you deal with failure.
So it's been a two hour of nothing but pleasure speaking with you. The last question I want to ask you is about men. I have a lot of friends who are men, who are lost. And when they talk to me, they tell me, I don't know how to go about life. The other day, a friend of mine came to this office and told me that, man, I was with Nani. Nani came to my house and he had not bathed. I could see for days. And he told me that he had been kicked out of his house. So I told him to go to the bathroom. He refused. And I told him, then sleep. It was late at night and the guy started pacing up and down, not able to sleep and talking to himself. A lot of women, if you watch my show, you'll see a lot of women have come to this show and have constantly complained about men, that we are not getting men to have a relationship, to marry me. They are timid. They don't say the truth. They are not honest. It's a disaster.
To say the least.
There's a lady, Dr. Zippy, told me that it really makes me sad that I don't see. There are men, there are uncles that brought me up, there are my fathers brought me up. And right now when I look at men or they bring me over to have coffee and I don't see.
Jagero, and therein lies the problem. The problem is this, that men are finding themselves at an intersection. At a juncture.
Crossroads.
Where we are expected to be as stoic as our fathers, in a world that our fathers did not live in. Now, we are expected to bring the same approach, tools, skills that they had in a world that is demanding of us of a completely different set of issues, right? And so you have, I think, a spectrum of men. If you look at the full spectrum of masculinity, you have men who have said, you know what, to hell with everything else. I will be like my father. I will be stoic. I'll ignore everything. I'll treat things with kifua.
Yes.
Right? Brawn.
Kifua mbele.
Brawn, kifua mbele. Right?
Yeah.
And then there are men who have read the times and they've completely gone to the other extreme. And they've said, we live in a modern world. We need to shift. We need to evolve. And so I'll lead with more empathy. I'll be more open. I'll be more sensitive. I'll be blah, blah, blah. Those things, right? And then there are those who, unfortunately, who are the majority, who are caught in between. These same women, if you should ask Dr. Zippe, are the very same ones, right, who demand of this sensitivity on the extreme end. Oh, you know, you're not showing me empathy. You've triggered me. You know, all those mental health words. So they want you to demonstrate those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they want you to be as stoic as their fathers and their uncles were. Their fathers and their uncles, our fathers, our uncles, didn't care for those things.
Yeah.
They found a way to survive. They didn't care for those things. But there are then, I think, a majority of the men who now want to try to be these things that society expects of us. Because, look, masculinity is a construct of society. It is a construct, you know, and a lot of people, it could be through your cultural leaning. So what does that Luanda Magere man look like? It could be biblical. I want to be, you know, as defined by my belief, which is I am the spiritual head of the home. You know, I should support and provide, right? And then there are men who believe I am what I want to be. And I will define how I want to be that thing. And I think we have to appreciate that men are finding themselves in this dilemma. We should be empathetic for those who are caught up in this crossroads. But it's a good place to be because it means that they are aware and therefore they are transitioning. What we need to be doing more, however, is talking because of this thing you have spoken about. Because all of us are going through this evolution, through this transition, but we're not talking to each other. Because again, traditionally, men don't talk about these things. We go to bars and we talk about booze and boobs and, you know, all the other things. And we forget about talking about each other and how we support each other. I am now beginning to see a lot of this happening, you know, men coming up with their own chamas, whatever they want to call it. You know, they normally disguise it as a boys club. We're talking about business. Yeah. But in that boys club, you will find people opening up and saying, hey, by the way, I'm having this challenge.
Yeah.
Right? And people are beginning to support each other. And I think we need to encourage that space. We need to reduce the volume on the noises coming from the other gender saying, you know, there are no men anymore, they are weak and stuff like that, and allow men to be men and to discover what this new social construct of what being a man in this modern society actually looks like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. These days you work for the Tony Blair Foundation.
Yes, sir. Look, it's very rare for someone to end up working for their, you know, standard bearer. In my interview with Tony Blair, I was starstruck. I couldn't speak.
I haven't seen that one.
Aye, my friend.
I haven't seen that one. I have to...
Starstruck.
Google doesn't seem to know about it.
It hasn't caught up with us yet.
Should I look for it?
Please do.
It's there. It's amazing, man. What do you do there?
So I started off as a regional director, so taking care of East Africa, you know, advising political leaders on strategy, policy, and delivery. We now have a big push on technology. About a year and a half ago, actually, it's a year and a half ago, I started a new role called Senior Political Advisor for Africa. So advising on matters politics and where policy and politics converge. But I've really only started doing that job like 3-4 months ago. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a long transition.
I wish you the best.
Thank you, Jagero.
With it.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Koa.
Thank you very much for the internet. That was me and Ronald Osumba. I loved it and enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing. Ask questions, leave a comment, and until another episode. Bye for now.